Hi, I'm Kelly at Book and Paper Arts, and today I have a look at what is in my portable art kit, my art supply survival kit. And that is because in 2 days I am going to France, and I will be there for a month. I am a very lucky woman. I love it so much. I will be staying in a little town and making regular road trips to buy old paper and vintage books and other things that I used in my original artwork. As wonderful as it is, I will be away from my workspace here in my studio in Wales, which is where I live, and that can be frustrating. A month away from making, it's just not going to happen. So I've done a couple of things. One is that I have front-loaded my brain and my to-do list with a few art projects that I can do on a coffee table in the apartment that I'm renting. And I'm also going to need the least amount possible art supplies to work on those projects. So today I'm going to show you what is in that art kit. These are also the supplies that I use to work on in my illustrated journal, my travel diary that I work on every darn day of my life. So stay tuned. We're going to walk through what's in here and talk about it, how you can use it, and stuff. If you like journal arts, if you like altered books and vintage books, paper, and other ephemera, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure and turn on the notifications. And that way, you will have more of them in your life. Let's go look at the good stuff. The first thing I want to look at is my sketchbook. It is the beating heart of my portable art supplies. That is because if you want to keep an illustrated journal, a visual diary, the first most important rule is always have your stuff with you. Even if you're just going to the dentist's office or the bank, if you take it with you, you're going to find you have little bits of time where you can work in your book. So I take this in a backpack with me on the bus, on the plane, everywhere. It is by, this book is by Talens, Talens. To be honest, the paper is a little thinner than I would have liked. But it's too late because I've already bought it. And if you've seen my videos, you know one of my rules is use what you got. And I'm certainly not going to not use a new sketchbook just because the paper is a teeny bit thin for watercolor. It'll be fine. Now, a blank book can be intimidating, your new book. And the last thing you need is an excuse not to get started. So one of my hacks for hitting the road with a new diary is to drizzle the pages with tea and ink and whatnot. I just open up the book and then I come by with a pipette or a spoon of tea and I just drizzle it on there, squash it, and open it. And then you have these little Rorschach tests that you can play with. That's some ink. Might have been a little bit too much of a good thing, but I'll make it work. This is coffee. And again, that gave me a lot of drama. But that's okay, because one thing that happens when you drizzle your pages before you get started is it takes away some of the fear of the blank page, but it also gives you something to start working on. And I just draw over these, draw into them, and it's going to do a couple of things. It'll start you off by giving your page depth and layer. And a lot of times I will find that as I start drawing whatever I'm looking at on the pages, these patterns will somehow lend themselves to what I'm working on. Happy accidents. They definitely make for some pretty and interesting pages. This is called an artist's roll, R-O-L-L, because it rolls up. Mine is made by Peg and Ole. It's called the Sendak. It's made of wax cotton, and it's made by hand. It's a beautiful piece, and it's one that I treated myself to when I had a pretty significant birthday that otherwise was gonna hurt. Actually, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I want to say, though, you don't have to have a fancy artist's roll to carry your art supplies. For years, I used a series of makeup bags that I bought at yard sales. You know, they're about that size. They look like pocket envelope things. Those are brilliant. Many's the time I've used a plastic bag from the grocery store, just a Ziploc bag. So use what you got to get your supplies where you need to get them. But I am going to put a link to this in the text box below this video in case you want to treat yourself. I like to throw in a couple of bulldog clips to whatever bag I'm carrying because sometimes I want to clip in loose papers into my sketchbook. And then you're good to go. You've got them. Back in the day, I used to carry the kitchen sink with me. Much, much more than this. But in time, it was actually making me list and gave me a very bad backache, and my shoulders hated me. So now I try to take the least amount possible. And besides, as you can imagine, or you found yourself, you just end up using the same couple of tools anyway. The most important thing to me probably are pens. I have a couple of art pens, and these are, let's see, there's a nib that's a 1 and a nib that's a 0.3. So these are pretty narrow, and those are what I use for quick sketching. For lettering, I have, let's see, some thicker pens. This one, oops, had a mishap. And it's got quite a thick line, so I can use this for lettering or heavier work. And let's see, I also have this plain old drugstore pen. This is a Pilot, and it's good for writing like text and adding words. It's super easy to write with. So I try to have an art pen, a pen with a thicker nib, and then something that's comfortable to write with. For pencils, I have a plain old pencil. This is just a black wing. And then I have a selection of water-soluble pencils. I used to take a ton of these. Now I just take a couple in basic colors, in graphite, and 1 or 2 in a bright poppy color. Poppy, is that a word? And I'm going to show you how these work reacting with water in your sketchbook. Is one that goes on as a pencil and reacts with water. So I've got a water brush here. If I add my clean water to this line here, this graphite pencil, it's creating a wash, almost as an ink. Here's that bright one. Now this is a Derwent Inktense watercolor pencil, and it gives you bright, bright, bright colors. And so now if I want to add a little bit of interest, and you can actually see, pull that color out like this. And if I want to use this for highlights or mark making, I've just got some super fun pieces that are going to work with water to give me a lot of different effects. One of the reasons that I swear up and down by water-soluble pencils in my portable art kit is because they are so forgiving. Especially if, like me, you're not really confident with your drawing and sketching. So we have here, I've done a super, super quick childlike drawing of my headphones. Okay. I haven't really measured anything. I haven't given them any perspective or proper detail. But because I've done them in this water-soluble pencil, now I can activate that and deliberately make this drawing smudgy and fun and messy, and rather than being perfectly accurate in every sense that a sketch can sometimes be, now it's just it's a suggestion, but a really fun and easy one. And I like, especially if I'm going out and working on drawing a building or something that is challenging. I have no perspective, sense of perspective. Water-soluble pencils are so forgiving. And you will not see me leaving home without a couple of these guys. You can also buy water-soluble pens. And to do this, what you need to look at your pens when you buy them. This one says water and fade proof. So once this goes down, you're not going to be able to pick this up with water. It's going to stay down. And there's a good place for that. But other pens have ink that will react with water. This one does not say anywhere that it's waterproof. And so now I've gone and I've drawn this very awkward pencil sharpener. And even after this dries, now I can activate this with water. And it's going to be all kinds of messy, mysterious, suggestive, and fun. Here I am drawing an ink bottle using a fountain pen. Oops. And most fountain pen inks are also very water soluble. Just gonna making a wash, and then so you can really, really, really have fun. Just when you're checking out pens and pencils, you can get them at any craft supply store, any art supply store, usually big box stores will have watercolor pencils. And of course, you can always get them online. Let me know if you have a question about those. Brushes are, for me, pretty essential. You don't have to. It may not be your style, but I use them. I need them. I have several kinds here in my kit. This one that I've been using with the water-soluble pencils is called a water brush. And it holds its water in this reservoir. You can just fill it up as you go. And then when you give it a a little squeeze like this, the water comes out. And so you don't have to worry about whether you've got a little cup of water. As you're hiking out in the middle of nowhere, you're going to have your water supply with you. It's super, super handy. I have them in a couple of different widths there. That one's quite narrow. Medium. That was quite medium. This one's medium. But then I have another one that's, that's got quite a fine tip, so I can get a little bit more detail. But you don't need this many. You just need one or two. I use these a lot. I also have some portable propper brushes, I suppose. And this one's made by Raphael. I got it in an art supply store. And they're quite small, which means that they're meant to fit in a travel art supply kit. Now, for these, you will need to be able, these are for when I'm like sitting down in a cafe or someplace, my coffee table, where I do have a nice container of water and I can just work a little more traditionally. They're not essential. I just enjoy the heck out of having them. They make me happy. This is another kind of portable travel brush. I bought these on eBay. And you just put in travel watercolor brushes, and eventually you'll come up with something like this. Again, they're quite short. That's got a nice tip. And then you can post the back like that, and now you've got a longer, more traditional brush to work with. These can be very pricey. I found some that were not too expensive, but they've actually lasted me a couple of years. I've been careful with them. So just keep looking till you find them in your price range. It's going to have a lot of nice, juicy paint and color in there. I also take a small set of scissors with me. These are Cutter Bee, and they are my favorites. When I'm working in my illustrated journal, my travel diary, I'm using lots of papers, found papers, pieces of maps, brochures, and a lot of times I rough tear them, but I like the option of fussy cutting if I want to. They will take these off of you if you take them through an airport security thingy. So I try to remember to put these inside my big suitcase, but then I have this small set of scissors as backups. And these are allowed, and in a pinch, they will let me do some fussy cutting. Let's see, I have over here in this pocket, I have a rubber eraser, a pencil sharpener, and a teeny tiny, tiny, tiny bottle of ink for my fountain pen. That'll keep me going for a while. Also, I just love little pockets. Over here, I have two acrylic markers. This is kind of a luxury to take these, but as I said, I'm going to be working on some art projects, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. And these acrylic pencils, markers, will allow me to write over glossy paper. Some of those found papers are going to be glossy papers, and this will let me write on them. That's because they're filled with acrylic paint. And this is actually a cheap brand that I got at the discount craft store. I have a plastic bone folder, and that's so that when I'm working in my book, I can fold elements nice and flat. On the back of this artist's roll, there are two big pockets. Big old pockets. and those are super handy. In one, I have a tiny, small, mini sketchbook that I've made myself just using some watercolor paper. And if I don't feel like taking my full sketchbook with me, especially if I'm hiking and doing a lot of walking and I want to keep my weight down, I can use this small sketchbook. Then I can either keep this sketchbook or I could tear the page out and then glue it into my big sketchbook. So many ways to use that. These are my watercolors. And I've already broken them. I don't know how. And I have just a few colors, pretty basic colors for mixing. Even if you are not painting, a lot of you might want to take some watercolors with you because you can they don't weigh much, and it lets you add color and mark making and interest to your page. Let's see, we could go with a little blue here. And now, let's say I've drawn my blue headphones. Well, after that's dry, later I can go in and I could just add a little bit of color and some pop. So I do like to have my watercolors with me. Most travel watercolor kits will have a little bit of a space for mixing paints, but I try to, one thing, I'm obsessed with palettes, palette mad, and I have this little baby mini palette, and when I use an external palette or something to mix my colors, I found that I was painting more and I was really upping my on-the-road painting game. So I do love these inexpensive little plastic mixing trays. Like that. And now I can make a nice wash. Let me see if I wanted to do something landscapey. And I would just have that color pre-mix there and ready to go. I also carry a glue stick. This is Yoo-Hoo. I love these. I love them so much that I buy them in bulk, and I'm not even kidding. They're not everybody's favorite, but I've had some journal artists say, "What? You use what?" But I really like them. They have a lot of slip. So in my illustrated journal, as I said, I'm going to be gluing in a lot of found pages, a lot of found papers. And I love how this gives me slip, lets me move my papers a little bit before they're dry. But whatever glue stick you like. And then I have this tiny mister. I have some fancy ones, but this one actually I got when in a hospital stay, and they had hand sanitizer in them that you spritzed, and I thought, whoa, that's free art supplies. Yeah, and I can use them to activate ink and liquid media on the page. I can also use it to activate my paints before I start working in my half pans. If you don't have any free art supply versions or the fancy ones, you can always get these at, in drugstores or grocery stores, supermarkets, and they'll have a small bottle, and you can load those up with water. I use them a lot more than you'd think. Here is an Altoid tin that I've altered. It's a little tin that sweets came in. And I have filled it up with bibs and bobs for some extra color. Here's a Derwent Inktense stick. Now this is water soluble. So if I want some extra color, I can use this in a lot of different ways. If I am just drawing, working around my neighborhood, or if I'm going hiking, I probably won't take this box because it makes things a little heavier. But if I am going, again, to be away for a while, it gives me a lot of pop and a lot of fun options to play with because I don't have all my stuff. See, this is a soft pastel. You can use that. And let's see. This is a piece of willow charcoal that I can use for making some charcoal sketches. So it is fun if you want to make a little tin of color and fun tools there. So normally pretty much what I take in my portable art kit is sketchbook related mostly. But on this trip, I'm taking a few other things. And that is because I said I've got a couple of projects on my to-do list that I can work on in the flat. And those are going to be something a little bit different for me. I usually work with original vintage papers, but recently I have watched some tutorials on how to make collage with magazine papers and image transfers with magazine papers. Well, I did not know you could do that. So I'm going to be working on that because magazines are something I can get on my travels. Free magazines in supermarkets, brochures, maps, and things like this, real estate guides. That free stuff that you can just pick up, found papers on the way. And then when I'm home between jaunts, I can work on these projects. I mention this because I will be making videos out of them, and they'll be coming to you soon. To do this, I am taking with me some gel medium. This is a kind of glue that I use. And I'm just taking a little old box of it. I am taking a little jam jar full of gesso because I'm going to be using this in these image transfers and magazine page collages that I'm working on for some distressing and whatnot. And then I'm also taking a very small container of homemade avocado ink. And I will be using that again to distress and add layers to these papers. So keep an eye out for that. We'll find out how that works. This is called something like a rubber cement eraser, and I got it online because the tutorial that I was watching on making the image transfers uses this to pick up the paper. So taking that with. These are not art supplies, but since I have them out, they are definitely part of my survival kit. The apartment that I'm renting does not have a television, and I'm going to use this time to stay off of the screen, which means I'm going to have a lot of time, some time for reading. So these are my travel reading books. This is called Don Fernando by Somerset Maugham, and it's a collection of essays that he wrote about 16th century Spain, about St. Teresa, El Greco, Cervantes, Velázquez, and other artists and thinkers and writers. And this is the kind of book I love when I travel. It just takes you down a million different rabbit holes, and I find it inspiring and fun because in spite of all that inspiration and history, it's also very much like a good gossip. except it's gossip about the 16th century. Practical mysticism. These are some exercises that I'm working on. They went to Portugal. This is by Rose Macaulay, and she's almost my favorite writer, one of my top 3. And again, this is a book that she wrote, I guess it's probably from the 1950s. And it's a series of essays about people through history, her exotic and entertaining account of travelers to Portugal and what they found there. So again, it's going to be part travelogue, a lot about writing and making, and then some skullduggery, and just good old-fashioned storytelling. So these are the kinds of books that I like to take on my travels. And then I have diaries. I do a lot of videos here about keeping visual diaries, but I also am addicted to written diaries. And I have been trying to put a little bit more of that into the channel here, and you will certainly be seeing more of it in the future. Because keeping a written diary is such an important tool for me. So I have this will not go in my carry-on bag. It's a little bit heavy. It will go in my big suitcase, and then I can work on my diary when I'm in where I'm getting to. I will have in my travel book, because I'm addicted to journals, because I need to write in my journal. If I don't write it down, it didn't happen. I have a tiny, a thin, lightweight little diary. Now, this is not my regular everyday book. It's one that I actually have just for traveling. And so I can have this with me if my flight is delayed, if I find myself sitting somewhere for a long time, longer than I thought I'd be, I can be working in my journal. And then, yes, I'm with my visual journal. This is the 4th diary that I'm taking, and I'm not even kidding. And this one is more of for those spiritual activities in practical mysticism. These are where I make notes, and they're more like devotional writing and for meditation. But it's very, very important to me. So I've got that diary, my lightweight one for my carry-on bag, my proper one for day-to-day, and then my visual journal. Okay, then. I have to get going. Those journals aren't going to pack themselves. Also, I have to pick out some cute outfits. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. If you have any feedback, especially if you'd like to share what kinds of things you take in your portable art supply kits, put that in the comments too. We can share and compare notes. Join me next week. I'm going to be coming to you from the French coffee table with some magazine collage videos and who knows what else. Until later, happy making.